We'll take a look at how this works. So if we were going to a certain site, for instance, if you go and you try to access https google.com, what you'll see is you'll see that you'll get a little locked symbol in the browser window, and if you click on it, you can see some information about the certificate chain. So what you'll first see is that you'll see this right here. This is the SSL certificate. And that SSL certificate was issued by Google's intermediate CA. And if we looked in our keychain, we would find that if I look for Google here, we'll find we have no entry for Google in our keychain that our browser is going to use to verify. So our browser certainly cannot verify that, but because of the chain of trust, the root CA is actually GeoTrust Global, GeoTrust Global CA. And if we look in our browser, we can see right here that that is listed, and we can validate that certificate. So let's look at a little more detail of this chain of trust and show how it works. So let's suppose we have our website nscc.ca and it wants an SSL certificate. So it's going to make a CSR, certificate signing request, and it can make that to an intermediate CA. And let's suppose we go to Google CA, which is an intermediate CA. Now, what was set up before was that GeoTrust has already validated Google's intermediate CA. It trusts it, and it has ensured by some process that Google is trustworthy, and it has authorized Google CA to issue certificates on its behalf. So what Google CA does is Google CA will issue an SSL certificate, and it will of course have information about NSCC there. It will list Google CA as being the intermediate CA, and of course all the certificate information. It is going to make a hash of it, and it is going to sign that certificate with the private key of Google. And all this together is part of the SSL cert that is sent to NSCC, so that will be sent back. But what else is sent back? Because browsers can't validate, the browsers don't have the Google Intermediate CA in their store, another certificate is also sent along. And this is a certificate from Google that will allow people to, browsers to validate this certificate. We'll show how that works. So this is a certificate. It is Google's intermediate ICA certificate. It is going to be digitally signed by GeoTrust. So that information's on the certificate. Now, what comes in a certificate is, and all certificates contain the public key for the entity that the certificate is from. So this is going to have the public key of Google, that intermediate CA. Up in here, we'll have the public key of NSCC, because the certificate up top is going to be used for secure communications with NSCC. So we have all this information here. We're going to make a hash or a checksum of it. And this is all going to be digitally signed. So Google's intermediate certificate is all going to be digitally signed by the private key of GeoTrust. And these two certificates are sent to nscc.ca, and they're installed in the NSCC web server. Now, when a browser hits the NSCC website, and when it requests an HTTPS or an encrypted type of communication path, what happens is both certificates get sent back to the browser. Now, the very first thing that has to happen is that if it looks at this certificate here, it'll be able to verify because this browser has the certificates for all root CAs, and because this is a root CA, it'll be able to unencrypt. It'll have the public key in the keychain, in the certificate that it keeps. It has the public key of all root CAs, so it can unencrypt this hash, and it can see that this certificate, or that the Google intermediate certificate, is trusted by the root certificate. So it says, okay, well, if the root certificate, I trust all root certificates, all root CAs that are in my list. And we looked at the keychain, it had a list of all root CAs. Because it can unencrypt this, it says, I trust anything that this root CA trusts. Well, the root CA has signed this certificate from Google, the intermediate CA, so it automatically trusts that. And it gets the public key from Google. Now it looks at the SSL certificate that comes back from NSCC. It uses the public key down here to decrypt this hash. It checks that the certificate was not altered, and it says, okay, well, Google has signed this SSL certificate. Since I trust the private CA GeoTrust, and since GeoTrust trusts Google, and Google trusts this certificate, therefore this browser accepts the certificate from NSCC, and it gets the public key from NSCC. It generates a symmetric key, and it encrypts that key with the public key that it got from NSCC, and it sends that key over to the web server. Now, this is the NSCC web server, which has a private key. It keeps it keeps secure, so it unencrypts and gets the same symmetric key, encryption key. And both ends now use this symmetric encryption key to exchange information in the rest of their session. So whether it's they're doing a credit card sale or whatever, the rest of the communication path will use this, this system. So this system here is how a chain of trust is established. Sometimes we call this a hierarchical chain of certificates.